You know, there is something truly magical about royal history. It isn't just about the dates, the official proclamations, or the statues in the square. For me, it is about the places. It's about standing in a room and realizing that history, real, vibrant, and sometimes scandalous history, happened right where you are standing. It holds a different meaning when you can touch the walls. I have been very lucky in my career to host various events at some of the most prestigious venues in London. And there is one place, a specific grand hotel on the Strand, the glittering Savoy Hotel, that always gives me chills. When you walk into that ballroom, particularly the famous Lancaster Ballroom, you can almost feel the atmosphere shift. It's like stepping back in time. What is fascinating is that when you go behind the scenes there, you see these wonderful black and white photographs lining the walls. These aren't just stock images, they are memories. You see the true titans of the 20th century. Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn, Marilyn Monroe, Laurence Olivier, they all sat in that very room, hosting big press conferences during the golden heyday of the 1940s and 1950s. Back then, the Savoy was the place. Along with Claridge's and perhaps the Dorchester, it was the #1 stage for the rich and famous to come along and sell their wares. It was easier then for them to sit down with a journalist, have a drink, and say, "Well, interview me here." I remember hearing stories about the infamous press conferences held there. There is a legendary tale involving Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe. It was very clear that Vivian Leigh was standing in the wings, watching as the younger, blonde bombshell took the spotlight to promote their film. Apparently, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. But, of course, Marilyn made sure she got all the headlines by having a strap accidentally bust forth. That is the power of show business. And it is the power of show business that leads us to today's story. It is a story that involves the collision of that Hollywood glamour with the British monarchy. And there was no figure more controversial in many respects, yet more central to this era, than His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh Prince Philip. We all remember his famous, rather biting remark regarding his grandson's choice of bride. He reportedly said, "One goes out with actresses, or steps out with actresses. One doesn't marry them." Apparently, that was the sage advice he gave to the Duke of Sussex. It is a shame, perhaps, that the advice wasn't taken, but that is a story for another day. What interests me is where that advice came from. It came from experience. Talking to someone very close inside the Savoy Hotel, an historian of the venue, learned that a story we thought we knew all about actually had a very different narrative. As ever, let me explain. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today, and welcome to all the new subscribers. It is lovely to have your company on this beautiful day here in the United Kingdom. Now, going back to the Duke. He had a very, shall we say, colourful life, didn't he? People love to talk about the controversial side of him. But I have always maintained that he was an excellent consort to Queen Elizabeth. They had a marriage that worked for them 100%. You could see the twinkling in their eyes, even many years into their vintage years. It was a wonderful love story. But the Duke was a man of his time. He was guided by men like Lord Louis Mountbatten, and there was a particular story that really would not go away. It concerned the celebrated beauty and musical star, Pat Kirkwood. Pat Kirkwood was a star with a capital S. She had a rather strange background herself, apparently fudging her age on many occasions to get roles. She found fame during the wartime by singing Cole Porter's "My Heart Belongs to Daddy." Now, if you read the biographies, everybody cites that Prince Philip and Pat Kirkwood met in a dressing room at the London Hippodrome Theatre. The story goes that she was appearing in a smash musical and he came backstage to congratulate her. Standard stuff. But according to my sources, that actually wasn't the first time they met. Oh no, you see, the real story is far more glamorous and far more intimate. Pat Kirkwood had already enjoyed a lot of success. She was what you might call an opportunistic young beauty. She had rubbed shoulders with Ivor Novello, Noel Cowardall, the big names. She had even opened at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas to phenomenal success. She was so successful that the Savoy Hotel decided to invite her back to London to appear in Cabaret at the Lancaster Ballroom. It was here that Prince Philip first met Pat Kirkwood. You have to remember, this was a totally different time. The ballroom had a stage, yes, but also a major dance floor. As a performer, you were encouraged to work the tables. You had to walk among the diners, sing to them, make them feel special, and work the tables. Pat did. Here is where the story gets really interesting. Not only did Prince Philip allegedly return 3 times to see this wonderful act, but on one occasion, he didn't come alone. My source tells me that the Queen's father, King George VI, popped along too. Without Queen Elizabeth, I might point out. Now, Princess Elizabeth was busy with her own life and duties, and she never really put too much restraint on the Duke. But this shows you the power of the royal connection back then. It was a gentleman's world. The king and his son-in-law enjoying a night of high-class cabaret at the Savoy. You won't know this part, but it tells you everything about the media back then versus now. The BBC, looking to gain some notoriety and publicity, decided that Pat Kirkwood, fresh from her triumph at the Savoy, would be the ideal person to launch her own show on BBC TV. In fact, she was the very first female on BBC TV to have her own show. The marketing team had a brilliant idea for the tagline. They wanted to bill the show as "loved by the royals, liked by the public." It was catchy. And it was true, based on who had been sitting in that ballroom. But at the 11th hour, they had to change it. Why? Because, simply put, nobody could or would dare factually prove it. They couldn't say it because nobody wanted to offend the British monarchy. It is a funny thing, isn't it? When you consider the landscape today, we see the BBC openly disregarding the correct titles for senior royals, calling Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales just Kate, or ignoring protocols entirely. They are allowed to do that now, but back then, they couldn't even use a factual account of the fact that Prince Philip and King George had been to see a show. The respect for the institution was paramount. The story was hushed up, the tagline was pulled, and the secret remained within the walls of the Savoy. It's a fascinating slice of history that they tried to hide, isn't it? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Do you miss that era of mystery, or do you prefer knowing everything? Let me know in the comments below. From the very heart of the United Kingdom, thank you for watching.